Hello everyone, my name is Cole. I'm from Mexico. We've been living in Spain for many years. I have a large family. Parents, grandmother, and 2 brothers and sisters. I am the eldest child in the family, so I have a lot of responsibility for the younger ones. And I am also the head of the family after my father. In short, I mean that any important decisions in the house are not made without me. I even take part in the discussion of buying a TV in the living room, So, my father had some problems at work. He had to either quit himself or they would have fired him. He was very upset because he supported the whole family. At the next family meeting, I made a rough calculation and offered to go to another city, buy a new house, find a job in the same field where my father worked, and start a new life. My father didn't tell anyone, except me, that he was being forced out of his job because he was now being replaced by a man with a criminal past. His pride didn't allow him to admit it. So we came up with a plan to move out of the city. And since my grandmother, grandfather, and mother especially listened to my opinion, it was decided to move. We chose a city far away from where we lived, sold our house and apartment. With these funds, we bought one big house, as my mother always dreamed, and even had enough money for a car. We were lucky with the purchase of real estate. Just realtors told us that the owner of the apartment has long left and sells up to cheap. It was amazing that we got it, but we were happy. We managed to choose a wonderful quiet area. In front of the house, there was a nice facade. The house had 2 floors, each with a room, a small courtyard on the street where my mother was going to build a summer kitchen. In general, although not the capital, but with amenities. For about a month, we equipped the rooms, the kitchen, made a summer house, and even bought a dog for the younger ones. We had a housewarming party in a small family circle, and then Dad got a job, and things got even better. I found an easy part-time job, and visited the old people's club every day to socialize. Thus, each of us chose an activity to our liking. One weekend, my father suggested that we go to his brother's house for the weekend. Everyone agreed, but I decided to stay. After seeing everyone off on a Saturday morning, I took the dog and went for a little walk with him to the store, bought ham, milk, eggs, and bread. There was nothing to eat at home. I left the groceries in the kitchen, went to the bedroom, changed my clothes, and when I came out, there was an empty bag on the table. I didn't know what the hell it was. The dog was in the room with me. Were they thieves? Then why do they need my products? I thought. Just in case, armed with a stun gun, I went through all the rooms with the dog. But everything was clean. Then I ordered a pizza, didn't finish it, left it on the table, and fell asleep. When I woke up a couple of hours later, the remnants were gone. It began to frighten me. I sat in the kitchen all day that day, but there was no one and nothing. At night, I installed my dad's old camera in the kitchen and went to sleep. What I saw the next day was shocking. A man broke into the house and stole my food, and he knew every corner of it. But I couldn't figure out where it went because the exit was on the other side. I dragged the camera to the front door the next night and then saw the man coming out into the backyard. I took the same stun gun with me and found the place where the man got out. Wow, I didn't even know we had a basement on this street. You can't even see it just like that. It was so well camouflaged. To be honest, I was terrified. I called a friend, and Carl arrived 15 minutes later. He brought my mother's pepper spray. I took my father's taser and flashlight, and we carefully opened the door and went downstairs. We did this very slowly, looking at everything around us step by step. When at last we were completely submerged in the basement, my dog beat us to it. She ran down, and we heard screams. Carl and I looked at each other and ran after the dog. A long corridor appeared in front of us, where everything was more or less arranged. Walls, ceiling, electricity. Running a little further, we saw a small room where our dog was standing, growling menacingly at the crowd of people. I shone the flashlight in their faces and saw 2 adults in front of me, a man and a woman, and 2 children. The children were particularly scared. I got the impression that they have been living there for a very long time. The light was dim enough, and the light from the flashlight made them close their eyes and cover their faces. After I chased the dog away, we just stared at each other. This family was so wild. They were dirty, scared. I noticed a pizza box on their table. "Did you steal my food?" I asked them loudly. They were startled by the voice. I repeated the question, but they were silent. Then Carl said he was going to call the police. Wait, the man shouted. "Yes, it would be me. I stole your food for the family. Please forgive me," he added. The longer we stood there and stared at each other, the more questions popped into my head. I told them all to go upstairs to talk. These people were not aggressive, but rather scared. They got up and went out into the courtyard. I stared at them, Carl holding the taser in plain sight, just in case. Then the man started talking fast and fast. "Mister, please don't hurt my family. It's my fault for stealing the food. We used to always eat food from the trash, But this time I couldn't resist the goodies you bought. The fact is that no one has lived in this house for a long time, he said. Then I learned from our long conversation that this used to be their home. Once upon a time, they took out a loan that they could not pay, and as a deposit, they left a house that they later lost. But this was not enough, and they still owed money to some friends. I built this basement a long time ago, in case of war or something. No one knew about it. When we realized that we had no money, no home, nothing, the only solution was to hide, he said. So they were stuck there for many years, and for how long, they do not remember. Carl and I were shocked, of course. I didn't blame them, because anything can happen, but it was impossible to live like this. At that moment, my family returned. They were happy after the trip. When they saw I was sitting with Carl on a summer holiday and strange homeless people were sitting with us, my mother's eyes were full of indignation. I fed and watered the family, gave them clean clothes, and offered them a bath. After they cleaned up, my parents talked to them. Oddly enough, but they are not angry. For some reason, we took their word for it and wanted to help. My mother called a special service where you could live for free for a while. We gave them some money and left a phone number. They called us the next day when the police found them. We also gave evidence and said that we have no complaints. The father promised to help find a job for that man, but in the meantime, this family also needs psychological support. After all, a woman with children did not go out at all, and who knows how long. From that moment on, we helped them as much as we could. Of course, not immediately, but over time, they came to their senses and began to lead a normal lifestyle.
Hello, everyone. My name is Adele. Please tell me what happiness means to you. True, everyone has their own. Money, love, friendship, family. I've always wanted parental attention. I understood that they need to work, so they do not have time for me. But I was already losing the sense of need in my family and so went to extreme measures. So, when I was very young, our family went through a very difficult period because we were poor. Both my parents were born and raised in ordinary families. They never had any connections or money. They married for great love. And then I was born. The situation worsened even more. My mother told me that once she even saw how my father wanted to commit suicide. She saw him put a noose around his neck. She called out to him and he seemed to come to himself, saw his daughter, that is me, and gave up this idea. Although my father denies this point, referring to the rich fantasy of his wife. That terrible moment cut into my mother's mind, and she decided to take drastic measures. She collected all the family savings, got into debt, and at her own risk invested the money in a small business. Unexpectedly for them, everything worked out. Gradually, the business began to grow more and more, and the revenue grew accordingly. A few years later, we bought a big house, 2 cars, a couple of apartments. My parents were proud that they had achieved everything themselves, and it really deserved respect. In the end, the money and work involved them to such an extent that they began to disappear on business until late in the evening and early in the morning. I had a babysitter a long time ago. She did send me to school, did my homework, read a book at night. Of course, I had everything I ever wanted. Rollers, expensive dolls, sweets, toys, dresses. But none of this could replace the most valuable thing. My parents, or rather their presence in my life. You know, it got to the point where we stopped seeing each other. If they had even come into my room to kiss me before, then that too had disappeared. But they didn't know that I sometimes waited until 4 a.m. for that kiss. And once on a weekend, when my parents were again in a hurry drinking coffee, while simultaneously reading the economic news from the newspaper, I stared at the robots, their suits perfectly pressed, their hair perfectly coiffed, their perfume expensive. They stared at the newspapers and kept talking about the economy. Our staff poured hot drinks with caffeine, and they didn't even look at them or at me. I took a deep breath at the table, but they didn't look at me. Then I coughed violently several times. "Yes, honey, are you all right?" my mother asked, also without taking her eyes off the newspaper. "Louisa, bring her some water," my mother said to the servants. "Mom, Dad, I have a suggestion for you," I said. I knew how to attract their attention with the keywords offer, conditions, money, business, job. They were always distracted by them. "This weekend is my birthday. Can we go somewhere together? For example, to our country house? We'll just hang there and have a barbecue and make cheeseburgers, huh?" "Sorry, honey, but we have to work. We have a lot to do. Can you choose something for yourself?" Dad and I can buy you a new toy or a phone or a dress. What do you want? She asked. My mood instantly dropped, and I was so angry with them that I wanted to explode. Is there anything more important than me? Why are they acting like this? You can't buy what I want, I muttered and left. I cried pretty hard in my room that night. I wanted so much to attract their attention, but it was all in vain. I got a call from my friend Stacy. She, unlike me, was not born and raised in a rich family, and she only had a mother, but she was an incredibly smart and brave girl. Stacy told me to come up with a plan. Look, it's no use talking to her parents, so you should do something to get them to pay attention to you. Since your situation has been running for a long time, you need to take drastic measures. Are you ready? She asked me. I agreed without delay. On the weekend, on my birthday, my parents came to my room in the morning, kissed me, left a gift, money, and left. I told them I'd be hanging out with Stacy all day, and they agreed. My friend and I met, bought bus tickets, and went to a nearby neighborhood. I was very worried because I didn't know how my mom and dad would react, or what they would do, or if they would even look for me. Anyway, Stacy and I spent the whole day together in a strange neighborhood. Thanks to the gift of money, we bought and ate whatever we wanted all day, and in the evening, I rented a room in a cheap motel. Thank you, Stacy, for telling me that such services exist. We were going to spend the night there. Stacy's mom often worked night shifts, so no one was looking for her, and neither was I yet. The babysitter called me several times during the day. So as not to cause a panic before the time, I picked up the phone and said that everything was fine, and later in the evening, I began to ignore all calls. Towards midnight, my mother called me once, and that was it. This disappointed me even more. Just one call? I don't deserve more than that? Then my father called once, and all. Then I decided to act. Stacy, on some program, recorded a voice message to my parents that their child was kidnapped, and if they want to see me alive, they must bring $500,000 to the specified place tomorrow morning, also warning them not to go to the police. She played the message into the phone, gave the address, and hung up. I don't know what they felt at that moment, if they felt anything at all. I didn't sleep all night. I thought they would just give up on me and that's it. I get home, open the door, and they're sitting at the table in their iron suits, drinking coffee, staring at the newspapers. The next morning, Stacy and I arrived early and hid with binoculars. My heart had been pounding for 2 days, and I couldn't control my nerves. At about 7 o'clock, I saw my father's car pull up. Oh no, it was the first time I'd ever seen him so exhausted. His eyes were swollen and red, and he looked older. It's like he'd aged 20 years in one night. My mother was sitting next to him in the car, constantly wiping her face with a napkin. She wasn't wearing makeup or a hairdo. They were both in yesterday's clothes. At some point, I was shaken by what I saw. What have I done? It flashed through my mind. Why did I go to such extreme measures? I felt sorry for my parents. I told Stacy I couldn't do it anymore, and I had to admit it. We were about to get out of the place where we were hiding, but I accidentally tripped over a trash can and fell down with a crash. At that moment, the police swooped down on us. They twisted our arms, immediately blocking the road. I screamed that my name was Adele and that I was the missing girl. No one heard me. Stacy and I were really scared. I thought we were going to be arrested or shot by mistake. My mother came running to me through the crowd of policemen. She forcibly shoved everyone who was twisting my arms. "This is my daughter! Get your hands off her!" she screamed. Her and Dad picked me up. I was all tearful with fear and regret and begged for forgiveness. The police stood there in disbelief and did not understand what was happening. I shouted that I loved my parents and they would forgive me. My mom and Dad hugged me tight. They probably didn't even hear me. The three of us sat on the muddy ground with our arms around each other, among a bunch of policemen, and talked about how much we loved each other. Of course, I later had to report for the incident. My parents paid the fine. We had a long conversation after that. I once again apologized for such extreme measures. Sorry, this is our omission. I promise that we will pay more attention to you in the future. We love you very much. This is all for you, my parents said before going to bed, and kissed me. It was the best moment of my life. Now I know for sure that my parents care about me.